Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual, and I'm joined by my co-founder and co-host, Paddy Mann. Morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
It's been a while. Well, in today's session, we're going to be talking about cash flow because it's no secret that right now, cash flow is a major concern for a lot of businesses. We're seeing huge layoffs from the biggest companies, and smaller businesses are simply struggling to survive due to rising costs. Clearly, this is a major source of stress, both for the leaders battling it and the employees who are concerned about their jobs. So as a result, we've been working on a new guide for business leaders to help them tackle cash flows issues in their businesses. And today I want to share some of the key lessons. In particular, we're going to focus on the 8 levers that we share for improving cash flow and how they can help. So Paddy, let's dive in. What are the 8 levers that business leaders can use to improve cash flow?
Okay, so there are 3 levers that you can pull to increase your incoming cash.
Yep.
The first one is increasing your prices, a kind of obvious one, but one that so many people overlook or leave too long. The second one is selling more, which could be any part of your sales and marketing process could help you with this one. The third is getting paid faster, so not waiting on invoices that are sitting there for months, getting the cash into your account. Then we've got 5 levers to reduce your outgoing cash. The first one is reducing people costs. But I should say that when people hear the word reducing people costs, they naturally think, oh, layoffs. That isn't necessarily what reducing people costs is all about. It can include layoffs. It can include losing people. But normally, small businesses want to avoid doing that. And there are lots of other ways you can reduce your people costs by reducing the cost of new employees that you're bringing in, by looking at the reasons that each employee is costing you money and ways to bring that down.
Improve efficiency and so on, yeah.
Then there's reducing the cost of purchases, so all the tools that you're using, everything else that you're essentially buying, paying others slower. So while you want to get yourself paid quickly, you also want to make sure that you're not paying other big debts quicker than you need to if cash flow is a concern. Reducing your stock, so keeping less stock actually at your premises in your systems, because that's something that you have to pay for and you don't get immediately remunerated for getting rid of it. And reducing the cost of debt. So any debt that you have with the bank or anywhere else that's incurring an interest rate or some other charge, reducing those costs.
Nice. And we've set out 8 there, and in various conversations we've explored whether to split and combine these and so on. But the important thing is that each of these can be used to fundamentally change the cash flow picture for a business, right? Like even individually, obviously combine multiple levers here and you get huge swings in cash flow. We've talked about it a lot, but like one business that I've worked with where they were in a situation where essentially there'd be $500,000 in the hole, like minus $500,000 cash, but with various cash flow changes we were able to make, it swung at the opposite direction. You get to at that point $500,000 in the black, like in the positive, and in fact since then they've grown it to like over 2 million. Like the swing and the impact that this can have on people is huge. So how do we use this? How do we use these as levers in a business?
Cool. Well, as you say, any one of these levers is going to have a huge impact. And going back the last 10 years, we've both got numerous examples. We're in our own businesses and looking at the businesses of others where just pulling a few of them has had a huge turnaround. It turns you from a place where you're experiencing huge stress, where you're considering making rash decisions, losing people that you don't want to lose, and so on, to a place where things are good and you continue on your path to growth and your wider goals. The way that I'd like to use the levers I find really useful is to have your eyes open to them when you are starting to experience cash flow issues, and then to find ways to systemize them to avoid future cash flow issues. When I say having your eyes open to them, it's so easy to go into a cash flow situation where you immediately look at, for example, how to get rid of people, because you go, people are my big cost. I'm just going to have to get rid of some people. I feel terrible that I'm going to have to do this. And yet there are so many other ways that you could be tackling this. And in some cases, they could be things that you could do just as quickly and would have a greater impact and would avoid a lot of pain associated with losing someone. Because when you lose someone, it's the emotional pain of having to make that call and cost someone's job, but the cost to the team of losing a resource, of then having to rehire and so on, it can be huge. It can actually hurt yourself more than benefit. So when I say keep our eyes open, I want to say use these 8 levers and use them as a way of framing your current situation in your business and where there are opportunities to tackle cash flow issues. So literally, you can take this guide, and we're going to be sharing the link later, and it's going to be in the show notes, and go through each of them. And there's a load of really useful questions you can use to start thinking about what's our situation, where could I be taking this, and see where the opportunities are. And I would bet you that you will find some that you would not think of. And I can say that because I know there's only over 60 different kind of examples that we give in of different processes you could be tweaking that would actually have a significant impact on your cash flow. So use those 8 levers, go through, look at the current situation in your business, look at where the opportunities are. Once you've got that picture, rather than jumping straight in and doing something, once you've got that full picture, then prioritize what you're actually going to do. So what are the improvements we're going to make to the business that should get us back into the cash flow position for short and midterm health? Then, of course, you need to deliver the improvements, follow them through, make sure that they actually get the desired result. But don't stop there. What you really want to do is then to systemize the improvements you're making and systemize regular reviews. Because what you don't want to be is a business that is essentially going through these once every year to 3 year phases of going into peace times where things are okay, and then every few years suddenly cash flows are a huge issue and you're having to make rash decisions again. Because it is, of all the stress points as a leader, I think when you're screwed for cash, that is the biggest one. When you actually know you've got a runway that is running out of time, and that if you don't get things right, you're going to cause some huge impact to the personal lives of your employees and yourself and everything else. There is no bigger stress. So you want to systemize the improvements you're making and systemize the regular reviews so that you can avoid this happening again in the future. So that instead of having a cash flow issue, you've got a big pile of cash in your bank account and you can weather any storm.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's interesting that whenever I look at various businesses that we've worked with, as you say, our own, ones that have consulted, ones that have been clients, it's really interesting that I see that for so many business leaders, the relationship with the cash flow in their business is quite an emotional one. As you say, it causes lots of stress when it's not there, but also the act of even improving it leads to a lot of feelings of defense around, oh, well, I couldn't possibly pay those suppliers slower. I couldn't possibly reduce any people costs at all. It's all to the bone anyway. There's no way in which I can improve my revenue through improving my conversion rates. My sales team people do a great job. Like, there's so many different ways in which that business owner, business leader would look at it and just say, oh, there's so little I can do. And yet I've equally worked with some incredible mentors and people who acquire businesses, people like Dan Bradbury and Jonathan Jay, who are experts at this. They completely get how all of these these levers are used in the business. And as a result, they walk into businesses that are in real difficulty with their cash flow, and they're able to, in a pretty systematic way, go through and essentially pull these levers to completely change the picture. And I know from talking to Dan Bradbury, for example, he's shared examples both in his case, but also others that he's worked with, where you take a business that is on its knees and essentially worth less than zero, and it's been bought for £1 or whatever, just because the business owner wants to make sure that the payroll of the existing team is paid and that he doesn't let people down. And yet you've got someone walking in with a set of skills and ability to pull these levers and completely change that picture, so that not only have they been able to make sure payroll's covered, but they're able to buy that business, whether it's for £1 or even more than that, buy that business with its own money, with its own cash flow. Like, it's incredible what's possible. And I always think that that's a crazy switch between, you know, people who really know how to do this stuff and are able to use it in quite an algorithmic, step-by-step process way, versus the business leader that feels emotionally connected to it. And so I think that's really hard to overcome for people. And so I think, as you say, using this guide and hopefully answering the questions helps people open up to that and see it as a tool, not just something that, I love the way that you put it, like not just something that gets you out of a real hole, but actually you can put in your business to make cash flow an ongoing source of good results in the business and not cause stress ongoing. So but let's bring that to life for people in terms of what that can look like. So let's pick an example. So one of the levers is reducing people costs. How might we approach that area?
Cool. So first step would be reviewing the current situation and then looking at the opportunities. So looking at the current situation, how much, what employees do you have? How much are they costing you? What's the breakdown of that cost? So not just going, this person costs 100 grand, this person costs 50 grand. How much is remuneration? How much is benefits? How much is the cost that they're incurring through their travel, their expenses? How much are costs on tools and other things that might be reduced? Then it's not just about people costs. Isn't just about the people that are currently working there and their salaries. You've also got, are there any teams that are planning to grow, and what are the costs involved in that, both in the new person that then needs a salary and any other benefits, and in the actual hiring costs. That is a major area that can be tackled as well. And then what are the risks? So you've got your current team, but what happens if we lose team members? Do you have any teams that are already experiencing a high level of churn where you expect to have to replace a certain number of team members on a regular basis? Is there any key people that you have at the top of the business or anywhere else that there might be a risk of them leaving, which would suddenly take a precarious cash flow position and really screw you if you needed to deal with that issue to replace them or take any other action? So get clarity on the current situation, and I say it's not just a kind of casual, okay, here's 5 people and I need to lose one. Look a little deeper. Then review the opportunities, and because you've got this slightly deeper view of the situation, you can ask questions like, okay, where do we have excess employees for our current needs? Because there may well be someone who's excess to your needs, and you're going to go, well, this sucks, but this is what we need to do for the business. That's okay. This is something that you may need to do in cash flow, but you should do it knowing that you've also looked at all the other opportunities, not that you've had to do it as a rash decision at the last moment. And we can also be looking at, okay, where can we reduce the cost of individual employees? And it could be anything from moving unused benefits, making use of tax breaks, helping them to reduce their expenses. I know when we went into the pandemic, then it was quite common for employees to actually take a cut to their remuneration, and in certain circumstances, teams will be willing to do that perhaps for a short period to avoid losses. Now, that might not be the right solution. It might not be a long-term solution, but it's going with your eyes open, understanding what opportunities might exist, so that you can then pick the right ones. Then, if you've got the need to either hire to grow your team or to replace existing team members, looking at where could we delay that need to hire? Where could we hire cheaper resources? And this is an example I love with the resources. It's something that we've used extensively in our business because our hiring costs could be significantly higher than they are if we didn't have great processes in each team. For example, our engineering team was, for a while, software engineering was crying out for senior engineers, which cost an average of 80 to 90K a year. But we established by improving the processes and the way that they were supported, we didn't need senior engineers. We needed more junior ones, which are more like 50 to 60. So you're making a huge saving in the new employees that you're bringing in. And a team of 3 people costs a huge amount less. And for this is software engineering, where each employee is worth or costs a lot more than multiple employees in other areas of the business. It makes a a huge impact if there's opportunities there. And how can we improve employee retention if you've got a sales team where people are lasting 6 months on average, or you're expecting to lose 3 people a year? Where are there opportunities to reduce that churn? Where up, because each time you have to replace one, we've got costs associated with hiring new ones, people coming in, negotiating their salaries, and so on. Lots and lots of opportunities to reduce people costs, and it's a really important area just because for most businesses, people is a big, big, big chunk of their overall expenditure. Once we've got that clarity, we've got the situation, we've got the opportunities, then we prioritize which areas to move forward. And we can think about, are there quick wins? And it may be that you do need to let go someone who's clearly excess, a team which isn't delivering value, and that's okay. But where are there, once we've dealt with the quick wins, where are there other things that we should be putting in place to improve our cash flow, both in the mid and the long term, which might be improving your processes in that software engineering team to avoid needing senior people in the future, and all sorts of other actions.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think, as you say, there's so many questions that we can kind of go through for that one lever that it's got to bring out some ways in which you can improve. And it makes me think about the fact how people cost is a great example, but it kind of applies to lots of the levers that we talk about in the guide around cash flow, is that the business tends to grow relatively organically, right? You're essentially growing a business is about trying things and then finding the things that work and kind of scale that, and often it isn't geometric growth. Like, you're not able to when you're growing, like your sales, for example, your marketing sales, the lead growth that you have it's not like you have chunks of lead growth that are equivalent to exactly the amount of a salesperson needs. It's not like, oh yeah, I get 10 leads a week and that's one salesperson. And then from next week onwards, it's going to be 20 leads a week, which means I need one more salesperson. What tends to happen is you'll get like 12, 13, and that salesperson starts to be stretched. And so then you have to go, oh, well, can I pull some resource from over here? Or maybe I can pull in a part-time salesperson, or maybe I can get a full-time salesperson or a contractor, or maybe it's a full-time person, but they doing part of another job. Maybe I get them to help out with the marketing. And so over time, the business kind of grows in this way. And so I think, as you say, like taking that opportunity to give it a bit of a reckoning and a reflection to look at, okay, going through some of the questions that you've posed there to really challenge what does the business need to look like going forward based on where you've got to, rather than the incremental steps and changes that you've made. If I think about some of the changes that we've made and looked at in both in our own businesses and clients, like a classic one is the nature of sales, where often, like when I've hired into sales teams, there's not quite enough work for only like just one type of sales call, like your very first sales call, discovery calls. And so they tend to do support and customer success and other aspects. But then as you grow, you do get to a point where actually it does make sense to split that up more and have different people for support and customer success and sales, and even split sales into outreach versus inbound, and even splitting inbound into like SDR, like arranging discovery calls and then conducting those calls. And so, and there are loads of opportunities with each of those decisions and how you break it up to reduce your people costs, right? Exactly as you say, like reducing the level that you need in some of those roles, or both in terms of skill level and therefore like salary cost, or indeed the amount of hours that are required in each of those areas. Like, can you get a fractional expert to help in a particular area?
I think it's worth sharing a very current example that we've got at the moment. We to some degrees, as a small and growing business who have high aspirations and vision, we always feel the pinch of cash flow right now. We're looking to grow rapidly, and we would love to have 3 times as many employees as we do to deliver on what we're setting out to achieve. But we've got a great example right now was we're looking at growing our sales team, and we know we need to bring in some specialized sales reps. And the easy option, and something we'd have done if we have a venture backed by huge amounts of capital and so on, is just to throw more bodies at it and bring in more specialist people and hope that over time they will become cash flow positive. But we could see in the short term that it could create a challenge. And so to reduce the people costs, we're not getting rid of anyone. We're actively growing. But what we actually did was we've been doing a detailed review of how our existing sales team are spending their time, and we've found ways to free up a significant amount of their time. Actually, it relates to a feature that we're working on in AirManual, where after they've completed a checklist to do a demo and discovery call, we found it was taking a big chunk of time to go out and do a load of follow-up. So they have to email the contacts, let our team know how it went, add a lot of details to the CRM. And this is a really common challenge in sales teams all over, is the amount of follow-up to make sure that your CRM is in the right position to give everyone the reporting they need and be able to do the follow-up. And we realized that using one of our new features to automate some of those processes and send the data directly from AirManual to some of the other systems would actually cut that follow-up time from, sometimes it could approach an hour, because the quality of the follow-up we do is really high, bring it down to like 15 minutes. And they're doing so kind of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these calls per week. That's a big chunk of time, which we can then put onto another task. Now, it might not equate to a whole new employee being on the team, but actually it did delay our need to hire that new employee straight away to be able to take on some of the tasks that we had planned for that new employee. So right there, we are significantly reducing our people cost by a whole person by actually looking not at reducing or getting rid of existing people, but just by preventing the need to hire by improving our existing processes.
Yeah, I love that as a great example. And it's a feature, as you say, it's brand new and still going through testing and so on. Existing customers reach out to us and we'll work out a plan for getting you started and using that. But I think it's the underlying point there, as you say, is there are often loads of ways in which you can reduce your people costs. It's whether you're often it's whether you're motivated to even look. I think because we're in the software space, we're used to seeing lots of other businesses that are heavily funded, which perhaps doesn't happen quite so much in some industries, right? Like even training businesses or marketing agencies or whatever tends to have much more tight cash flow management. There are some SaaS businesses where literally they get tens of millions early on, and the challenge for them is almost how quickly can you spend it, because you've agreed to your investor that you will. And so often what I'll hear is them talking about, so what we need to do is the big challenges those businesses have is, I need to find a really good VP of sales. I need a really heavy hitter, experienced VP of sales who's got experience of taking, suddenly going up to 10, 100 million revenue or whatever. And that this is a who problem. They'll come in, they'll hire the team. They know the experience of all those things. And that's fantastic if you've got that kind of funding behind it. And of course, that's not to say that that automatically succeeds. I know plenty of examples where they do that, they spend the money and actually it doesn't end up profitable and the whole thing goes pop because it's not been able to move forward. But of course, from an investor perspective, it allows you to do what you really want, which is either grow big quickly or fail it fast. And so, but that doesn't work for most of us. And Paddy and I have always run bootstrap businesses. That's not the aim. We're much more up for finding our way, but we need to remain cash flow positive. And so finding these ways makes a huge difference. However, there's so many things that we could do in terms of improving cash flow, and we talk about the 8 levers and so on. So where would you start? What would be the kind of first steps?
So starting point, honestly, download the ebook. It's just going to take you through each of those areas. It's going to take you less than an hour to scan through, and it's going to put a lot of questions in your mind, and it's going to really help you look at the full picture rather than jumping to conclusions and making rash decisions. Once you've reviewed it, thought about the current situation, where the opportunities are, then take the quick wins. There are going to be some changes you can make, particularly if you haven't done this exercise recently. I assure you there'll be some changes you can make that will suddenly appear obvious. They're going to take little effort and they'll get an immediate impact.
Love that. And I was just going to say the link for that, guys, because I mentioned a few times, is airmanual.link/cashflow/ebook. So that's the business leader's guide to improving cash flows at airmanual.link/cashflow/ebook. Sorry, Betty, go ahead.
No, you're quite right. And we'll share it again at the end and in the show notes. But yeah, definitely grab a copy. Then take the quick wins, as I say. Just as an example, for many small businesses, it will include reviewing your prices, and that's every time we've been in the cash flow issue, that's where we start. Is going to be one of the early areas, because it's, as you shared at the start, there's so much emotion often built into it, and people are particularly, again, in small businesses where they haven't done this systematically for a long time. Reviewing your prices feels uncomfortable. Like the idea of having to tell people that your prices have increased, and the fear that they might revolt and it might cause all sorts of problems, which is usually unfounded, and usually you've left it a lot too long. So this is a time where you make it happen, and the impact to effort ratio of increasing your prices is just an epic example where increasing your prices just a small amount, perhaps 10%, may not even be noticed by customers. They might be going, I can't believe they kept their old prices static for a few years. And in some businesses, you can be able to do it by a lot more. But it could have a huge impact on your profit margin, and the impact of not doing it, of holding back on changes like your prices and other quick wins and other opportunities that you'll identify by doing this review is huge. You're basically throwing money away. That's money that could be slowly building up in your business so that you can grow faster, help achieve your goals, support your customers better, support your team better.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And then beyond the quick wins, then it's those longer term opportunities. So don't just fix it, put a band-aid over, move on. Work out the longer term opportunities, work out how to systemize it, work out how to put the reviews in place so that you are being proactive and managing it going forward.
Fantastic, love it. Thank you, Paddy. And I think in this episode we've talked about how cash flow can be such a significant source of stress for business leaders, their teams, right down to individual employees. I think often it's a really good thing to be transparent in a business about what's going on in all of your metrics. Like hiding cash flow is actually a real risk to your business. I think business leaders worry about, but I don't want to scare people. And it's like, yeah, but they'll make decisions that are not in the best interest for your cash flow if they don't know that that's something you need to consider. And obviously not our own examples, but I think business leaders can absolutely, using these 8 levers, they can question things that perhaps they've left unquestioned for too long. And we've seen so many examples where pulling a few of these levers can have huge swings in cash flow and completely take the stress out of it. So thanks for sharing those tips and that deep dive. As we've talked about, we've got the Business Leader's Guide to Improving Cash Flow, can be found at airmanual.link/cashflow/ebook. Go get your copy there. Also, so that we can go deeper and we can answer questions that people have got, I'm going to be running an Ask Me Anything session, an AMA, available at airmanual.link/cashflow/webinar, where I'll be talking about cash flow and answering people's questions on this topic. I'll be benefiting not only from the incredible amount of research and work that we've done to create the ebook and the guide, but also for this podcast, for De-Stress Your Business, I'm going to be interviewing lots of experts and people who have experienced both ends of the cash flow spectrum and pain. So I'll be able to bring all of that experience for you as well. So really looking forward to that. Do register for that at airmanual.link/cashflow/webinar. On the other hand, if you're struggling to even find the time to improve cash flow, we actually run a weekly webinar on how to free up 15 hours per week and remove the constant stress of running a business and unlock growth. You can find out more and register for the next one at airmanual.co/webinar. The final note for you listening, either on our podcast or on social media, as a still new podcast, we need your help. We've been growing really well. We've been getting great feedback. But if you found the content today valuable, then please do share it. And ideally, also just take a quick 30 seconds to a minute, leave an honest review. That will help the podcast get more visibility, ultimately allow us to help more people. And I can attract even more awesome guests onto the episodes to help give you even better advice. Otherwise, it's been great covering cash flow. Thank you, Paddy. But for everyone else, until next time, have fun.